Do you want to know who the best champions are for each class in OB58? Well then you've come to the right video, as I'm going to go through who I think is the best champion for each class, or well, a handful of champions I think are currently in the meta. As always, tier lists are pretty subjective and also depend on player skill, which maps you're playing on, and a lot of other factors go into account, but I do think these are the strongest champions just in general this time round. Now, if you want to share who you think are the best champions for each class, be sure to let me know in the comments section below as I go through mine. Anyway, let's just dive into it, and first up we have damage. For me, Cassie rolls into number 1, and she's been in the high spot for a long time now, for several patches. Why? Because her dodge roll build is just so powerful. It allows you to get into the enemy backlines, roly-poly around, hitting an enemy, rolling again, hitting an enemy, rolling again, basically taking out the damage dealers and using the enemy tanks as basically jumping boards. If you hit them, you can dodge roll straight away. And not only that, but if you are pushed back and you need to defend, Cassie can also do some poke damage. You don't need to just be a flanker. She's very flexible in doing both roles and can fit into both depending on what the situation needs. She can be a great flanker or she can be a good backline damage dealer. And with the double tank being almost insta-picked on pretty much every ranked game, her high damage, added to the fact that she can go into the enemy backlines, get the damage dealers, but then also use those tanks to jump around like I mentioned, means that she is very strong. Her ultimate is also pretty good and can be used for the whole team's benefit, basically acting like a team-wide wall hack. And her ultimate does just flat out counter a lot of the stealth abilities in the game, and also some of the big ultis like the Maeve's blind. She's also got some knockback to deal with Ashe, who's also pretty strong this patch, knocking her out of her ultimate, and also has that inbuilt Corsair with a blast shot, and that can be combined to make some pretty hefty burst damage if you're trying to take out a single target quickly. My co-pilot in the top spot this time round is Charlene, so I feel that Charlene is great with the double tank lineup. He's great at taking down shields, he's great at just going into his planted, taking down the tank's health if needs be, breaking that up, but also picking out single targets and just doing a hell of a lot of damage to them or stunning them to a wall and then bursting them down. For me, he's the best backline damage dealer, sitting back and taking pot shots. Has his escape where he can go invisible and also go backwards, but also the Desert Shadow legendary is working out quite well this time round as well. I feel that Zilean too is strong still this patch. I just feel that she's been knocked down slightly after her precision was nerfed, so it no longer has the bonus damage. Although Alacrity can be quite fun to use, applying Corsair to everybody, doing large amounts of damage, resetting your grace, basically just spamming your grace as much as possible to do quite huge damage. But she's just lost that little edge she had over Cassie before, where she was quite bursty, and I think that Cassie does really have a strong position, and Charlene in a different capacity, just slightly better than Zilean in my opinion. Drogo's and Bomb King are also okay, and Willow's alright this patch. Moving on to the front line, and there's a few more for this category, as in rank mode both teams will probably pick 2. So I've got 4 tanks listed. So first up, and I think the best just outright at the moment, and has been for a while, just dipping in and out, is Makura. So he's got the massive utility in his hook, being able to grab an enemy, dragging it to your allies, and then letting your allies burst them down, or Makura having his next shot be huge, the bonus damage, also being able to burst them down himself too. And with the past few patches, he had been buffed with his actual weapon, so his weapon is much more versatile than it ever was. The max damage range, the drop, because the projectiles were buffed, have made Makura a lot stronger, and it's much easier to get shots off even if you're trying to chase somebody down to secure a kill. And as a bully and a very active, bruising frontliner, Makura is definitely in my top spot at the very least. Second up is Barak. So Barak is pretty strong this patch. Paired up with a bruising frontliner, he can sit on the point, set up, and basically do a lot of havoc. Not only does he have the option to have a massive shield in one of his legendary cards, he can also be not just tanky, he can also be active if the enemy team pick up something that's quite mobile, that needs to be shot down, that might be going for the tanks like a Drogos or a Willow. With the Tinkering legendary card, he has options to go against the enemies. And between his shield and between his turrets, the turrets do sort of deny quite a lot of enemy attacks, and especially if you're going against a Cassie can run into trouble if they hit your turrets by accident, which actually happens quite a lot. His ultimate can be quite clutch too, if used at the right time, and generally he's just been doing very well this patch. Next up, I think that these two frontliners are pretty much on the same level. Both of them can be bruising champions, getting into the enemy backlines to destroy the damage dealers, or just generally bully the enemy team, and that is Ash and Fernando. They both do a very similar thing. Fernando can get into the back, do his Scorch, throw his fireballs out. The Ash can knock people around. I think it's just depending on the map which one is better than the other. You might want to go the Ash on Frog Isle or Fish Market, for example, and Fernando in quite a few of the other maps. I do feel there's a slight problem with Ash's ultimate, just because if you go against a Makura, you're going to get dragged out of it every time. So if you're pairing up with a Makura, then that's fine. But also there's a lot of other crowd control that can take you out of it, which often makes it a little bit useless. It might force you into taking a bit of resilience. With frontliners out of the way, let's move on to the supports. So Jenos has definitely been strong for a long time now, but I just feel that with the two Jenos nerfs, they nerfed the healing legendary card, and now it's only 10% of the maximum health of the person you heal. The burst is slightly diminished from what it was, but a lot of what he does is still there. But I feel that Maldamba is great at single target healing. He's had buffs as well in recent patches. Can be better with the Mending Spirit's legendary, which was buffed. He's got one of the strongest ultimates in the game, and it can literally be a clutch to win a point right at the end of a match, pushing everyone away, and you can basically just win the point that way. Also using it into a single target, it's like people go crazy for it, think it's a meme, but it works quite well, just bursting somebody down as you get them in your Dread Serpent. Your stun snakes also give you a lot of utility. You can break shields, you can generally hold down enemies as your allies can take them down, and you can pretty much spam them around the map, and you can pre-fire them at places where you think enemies are going to come from and knock them down before they get to you, and that can be good too. I might even force out the resilience pickups from the enemy team. Not that that would be good or bad, but they're using credits to go against you. The other big bonus with Maldamba is your Gourd. You've got a big AoE heal, and just in general, adding that to your Mending Spirits and your AoE Gourd, there's a lot of healing going on there, and I feel that it's a bit more bursty than Jenos' heal. And even though Jenos can just hide behind a wall and get his heals off and be quite safe, Maldamba can get stuck into the action and jump around, and especially with Slither you can dodge a lot of the enemy abilities and survive for quite a while inside of your Gourd slithering around. So my second support, my number 2, I don't know if you've noticed now, is Jenos. So he was nerfed twice, but the heals are still reliable, they are constant, he can do it from the safety of behind a wall. I mean, it's quite hard to chase after a Jenos as well. Even if you're a flank, him using his escape ability and flying away means that he can survive for a long time. Jenos often doesn't die much in a match. He can escape when your allies go down and people pull back, and he can go all the way back to the spawn room just using his ability, as it is toggleable, so it's not like he's going to get stuck at any point. Plus he's got some big utility in his Void Grip, and a single use is a bit stronger than Maldamba's stuns, but not quite as strong as Makura's hook, somewhere in between the two, as people can just roll out of it. Finally, I'm going to come on to the flanking class. Now, I still feel that flanks are on a bit of a shaky ground, and can be fulfilled by more divey damage dealers to secure kills and things like that, which flanks are meant to do. I mean, Cassie and Leanne, they have very low cooldowns on their escape abilities, and Cassie can just reset hers. So I feel that they fulfill a lot of what the flankers can do. But this time around, I think that Zin has a bit of a niche to add to a team that can sometimes work out. And I've seen a few esports matches where he's been used, and he's kind of been okay. And especially this patch, they basically buffed the counter time between countering and being able to do something else. So basically you can go from counter to billow, and it feels a lot more fluid than it was before, and I think that's what makes him a bit more interesting as somebody that can harass the enemy team, get right into the back line, just start swinging around, counter, then once that counter's gone, go straight into his billow, get away, then go heal up, and sometimes you can heal passively in the billow if you haven't been hit because you come out of combat, and then come back and be very aggressive in the backlines. And especially if you're in a small room, the Zin can spin around, hit all the enemies, you can counter into a large area. I do think it's a bit niche, but in maps where there's more buildings and tighter corridors to go through, then it can work out here and there. We'll just have to see if this evolves at all from now. So next up with a buff this patch is Maeve. They made the daggers more consistent, easier to use, and hitting things that she needs to hit and deny in the back lines, so she can deal with the more mobile damage champions now, I think, with these daggers a bit better. She struggled a little bit before, so you're going to have a bit more of an easier time against Zilean, Cassie, Drogos, Willow. And the thing is with Maeve's daggers, there's not a huge amount of drop and there's no damage drop off, so you can sort of backline do a little bit of damage if you need to, if you're not going to be going and diving in, if your team's push back or something like that, and you've got to have a defensive line. But I just feel that Cassie and Leanne might still do pretty much everything that Maeve does, but slightly better. I mean, Maeve on some maps can get over walls and jump to the enemy's side of the map without having to travel around the whole map. Things like that with the vertical movement do benefit the Maeve quite a bit. Like on Stone Keep especially, you can just jump straight over the wall and you're in the enemy's backline straight away, and you don't have to be in any danger because you're just jumping over a wall which nobody can shoot over. But especially with the double frontliners, it's hard for a flank to get involved, and especially dealing with a Makura, going against a Makura, if he hooks you, you're pretty screwed. So you just really want to avoid that at all costs. So I wouldn't pick a Maeve into a Makura, but if you've got a Makura already on your team, then it might be an option. But I wouldn't say any first picks. Again, what does everybody else think about my list? Do you think anybody is missing, or would you add anything? And what is your list of the best champions this patch? Again, tier lists are very subjective, depending on player skill, what map you're on, and things like that. But I do think these are really fun, so you'll probably be seeing some more. And if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my content, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Joshino.